Indianapolis, Indiana, June 26, 1977, 6:45 in the evening. Dick Grob has been doing this for 9 years. 9 years of standing in the wings of stages while the world screamed for the man in the center. 9 years of watching the crowd from the edge of the light, of knowing every exit in every arena in America, of reading rooms the way other men read newspapers, quickly, completely. Looking for the things that most people miss. Dick Grob is Elvis Presley's head of security. He has been since 1968, since the Las Vegas comeback. Since the Colonel decided that the returning Elvis needed professional protection on a scale that the Memphis Mafia alone could not provide. In 9 years, Dick Grob has seen everything. He has seen the crowds surge, and the barricades bend, and the teenage girls faint in the front rows, and the grown men cry at the back. He has seen Elvis perform on nights when the voice was perfect and nights when it wasn't. On nights when the connection with the audience was electric and inexplicable, and nights when Elvis was working rather than flying. He has seen the whole range of what it means to be Elvis Presley performing in front of the world. What he has not seen in 9 years of standing in the wings is what he sees on June 26, 1977. He has not seen this. To understand what Dick Grob saw that night, you have to understand what he was used to seeing. You have to understand the particular vantage point of the man who stands in the wings. The audience sees the front. They see the jumpsuit and the scarves and the smile and the movement, the full presentation of Elvis Presley, performer. They see what Elvis is showing them. And what Elvis shows them, even in those final years, even when everything else is failing, is extraordinary. The skill is still there. The connection is still there. The quality of attention that Elvis brings to an audience, the specific ability to make 18,000 people feel personally seen that does not go away. But Dick Grob sees the side. He sees the three-quarter profile, the space between songs, the moments when the house lights shift and the crowd's attention moves to the band, and Elvis stands at the microphone in that brief interval of relative privacy. He sees the face when it is not performing, and in 9 years, he has learned to read that face the way he reads rooms. On June 26th, he starts reading it at 6:45 in the evening.
Thank you.
In the dressing room at Market Square Arena, 3 hours before the show, Elvis is quieter than usual. Not unusual in itself, Elvis's pre-show moods varied. Some nights talkative and loose, other nights interior and still. But the quality of the quiet on June 26th is different from the usual pre-show stillness. Dick Grob notices it immediately. In the specific way you notice things when you have been paying close attention to someone for 9 years. He is not preparing, Dick Grob would say later. In a conversation with a journalist he trusted, he is not getting into performance mode the way he always did. He is just sitting there, like a man who has already decided something. Elvis asks for the room to be cleared of everyone except his closest circle. The wider entourage, the hangers-on, the people who were always there, they are asked to leave. Just the core. Just the people who had been there longest. When the room empties, Elvis looks at the people remaining. He looks at each of them in turn. He says, "Thank you for everything." The people in that room exchange glances. The words are not unusual in themselves. Elvis expressed gratitude often. It was one of the consistent things about him, the good manners that had survived everything else intact. But the context, the unexplained completeness of it, the way it landed as though it was something more than a pre-show remark lands differently. Dick Grob files it. He files everything. The show begins at 8 in the evening. Elvis takes the stage to the usual fanfare, to the roar of 18,000 people who have been waiting for him. From the wings, Dick Grob watches what he always watches: the crowd, the exits, the space around Elvis, the variables that could become problems. And he watches Elvis. The first 40 minutes are good, better than good. Elvis is engaged, working the crowd with the specific intelligence that no amount of health decline can take from him. The knowledge of where to look and when to move and how to use a pause. accumulated over 23 years of doing this, in every kind of room. The voice is not what it was at its peak. Dick Grob knows what it was at its peak. He was there. But it is doing what it needs to do. Then, Elvis walks to the piano. Dick Grob watches him sit down, watches the band step back, watches Elvis put his hands on the keys and begin to play Unchained Melody. And Dick Grob, who has been watching Elvis perform for 9 years, understands immediately that something different is happening. He would describe it this way: you know how a person looks when they're performing, and you know how they look when they're not. When they're performing, there's a layer, a distance between them and what they're doing. They're managing it. Elvis was one of the best at that management I ever saw. But at the piano that night, the layer was gone. The layer was gone. Dick Grob watches Elvis sing Unchained Melody with no layer between himself and the song. He watches the emotion move across Elvis's face without being managed or redirected or shaped into something more presentable. He watches tears come, and he understands in the way that people who pay close attention to other people sometimes understand things before they can fully articulate them, that what he is watching is a man saying something, not to the audience, not to the arena, to something the arena cannot contain. After the Unchained Melody performance, Dick Grob shifts his position slightly. He moves closer to the stage. Not because of a security concern, there is no threat. The crowd is emotional but orderly. He moves closer because something in him needs to be closer. Something in him has been activated that is not the professional reflex, not the trained vigilance, something older. The show continues. Elvis performs 5 more songs. Dick Grob watches from 3 feet further into the wings than his usual position. He watches Elvis sing Can't Help Falling in Love. He watches Elvis say goodnight to Indianapolis. He watches Elvis walk off the stage for the last time. In the wings, Elvis and Dick Grob are briefly alone in the specific way that people are sometimes briefly alone in busy spaces, everyone else moving, equipment being broken down, the activity of ending a show flowing around them while they stand still for 30 seconds. Elvis looks at Dick Grob. Dick Grob looks at Elvis. Elvis says, "Good show tonight." It is what he always says. The same words after hundreds of shows. Good show tonight. And Dick Grob has always responded the same way. The ritual response that closes the evening. But tonight, he pauses before answering. For a reason he cannot entirely explain, he pauses. Then he says, "The best one." Elvis looks at him for a moment. Something moves across his face. Then he nods. Just once. And he keeps walking toward the dressing room. Dick Grob stands in the wings for a moment after Elvis is gone. Around him, the crew is breaking down the equipment. The sound of the arena is changing from performance to aftermath. The 18,000 people are filing out. He stands there. He will spend a long time afterward, years, decades, thinking about why he said what he said. The best one. He had not planned to say it. It was not his usual response. Something in the evening had produced those words without his full participation. The best one. 7 weeks later, on August 16th, 1977, Dick Grob was at Graceland when the call came. He was one of the first people there. He would spend the rest of his life involved in the preservation of Elvis's legacy, in the work of ensuring that the story was told as accurately and completely as possible. He gave interviews over the years. He talked about the security work, about the logistics of protecting the most famous man in the world, about the specific challenges of keeping Elvis safe in the era of massive arena concerts. He talked about many things. He talked less often about June 26th, about what he saw in the wings, about the layer that was gone during Unchained Melody, about the 30 seconds in the wings after the show. But when he did talk about it in the careful, specific way of someone who has been sitting with something for a long time and has learned to trust the weight of it, he always said the same thing. He said, "I knew, standing there in the wings, I knew. Come." I didn't know what I knew, or what it meant, but I knew something had ended. Something had ended. The audience saw the front. They saw the performance. They saw the king of rock and roll, giving them one more night of everything they had come for. And it was real. It was genuinely real. The connection and the music and the love between Elvis and that crowd on June 26th. But the man in the wings saw the side. He saw the face when it was not performing. He saw the layer disappear. He saw the tears that the audience saw too, but he saw them from 3 feet away, from the angle of someone who had been paying close attention for 9 years. And he said, the best one, because it was. Not technically, not in terms of the voice at its peak, not in terms of the choreography or the set list, or any of the measurable qualities of a performance. But in the way that matters more than any of those things, it was the most honest performance Dick Grob had ever witnessed, the most direct, the most completely connected to whatever it is that exists beneath performance, beneath legend, beneath 42 years of being Elvis Presley, in a world that had decided what that meant. It was the most himself Elvis had ever been on a stage. And Dick Grob, the man who had spent 9 years standing in the wings, watching the side of the face that the audience never saw, Dick Grob was the one who was close enough to see it. He carried it with him for the rest of his life. Some things you witness and you cannot put down. They become part of you. They change what you know about the people you thought you understood. Standing in the wings of Market Square Arena on June 26, 1977, Dick Grob understood something about Elvis Presley that 9 years of proximity had not fully given him. He understood that the performance, all of it, every night of it, every jumpsuit and scarf and gyration and crooked smile had always been in service of something real. That somewhere underneath the management and the distance and the professional skill, there was a person, a real person, with real grief and real love and real awareness of what was coming. And on that last night, the real person came through. The layer was gone. And for 4 minutes, at a piano in Indianapolis, 18,000 people got to see what Dick Grob had been standing close enough to see for 9 years. They got to see Elvis. Not the king, not the legend, not the performance, just Elvis. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that the people closest to the famous are often the ones who see what the rest of us miss, please subscribe and share it. Drop a comment below. Did you know about the people who stood in the wings with Elvis every night? And what do you think it meant to be that close to something that large for that long? The notification bell is right there. Ring it. Because the most important things are always happening just off to the side, just outside the light.